All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the homes of J.D. Vance.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, and we've got this article here that actually traces his real estate journey. From his childhood home
Wow.
all the way to a potential stay at the vice president's residence.
Oh, wow.
Pretty crazy, huh?
That is quite a range.
Yeah, so it's not just about square footage and, fancy addresses, though, is it?
No, not at all.
Oh.
It's really about how our homes reflect who we are, where we come from, and maybe even hint at where we're headed.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Each house is like a chapter in J.D. Vance's story.
Oh, okay.
And the architecture, the location, how the community reacts to him being there, those are all clues to understand his journey a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a really great way to look at it.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning, shall we?
Sure.
This article begins with Vance's childhood home. It's in Middletown, Ohio, and it describes it as this modest 2,000 square foot, two-story house built back in 1900, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, valued at around $223,400.
Okay.
It's not exactly the image that comes to mind when you think of a future senator or, maybe even vice president, right?
Right. And that's what I think makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
This house, as humble as it seems,
Yeah.
is deeply symbolic.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider Vance's background. And you think about his book, Hillbilly Elegy,
Oh, yeah.
which, that book really resonated with people. And it painted such a vivid picture of this house and the struggles his family faced there.
Totally. Yeah, it's like that house became a character in the book.
Exactly. It became a symbol of a certain segment of America.
Yeah.
Their challenges, their resilience. It went beyond just a physical space.
Yeah.
It almost became like a literary landmark.
And I bet for people who read Hillbilly Elegy, actually seeing that house
Yeah.
probably added another layer of meaning to the story.
Oh, absolutely. It grounded the story in a reality that a lot of people could relate to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this picture of Vance's childhood home,
Right.
this place that is rooted in his personal history and the story that launched his career.
Right.
Now, fast forward to 2014.
Huh?
Vance, fresh out of law school, buys a townhouse in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
in the Capitol Hill neighborhood
Mhm.
for $590,000.
Mm.
Talk about a change of scenery.
Yeah, it's a big shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's significant on so many levels.
Yeah.
I mean, Capitol Hill is the epicenter of American politics.
Yeah.
It's a statement about ambition.
Yeah.
About entering the halls of power.
For sure. For sure.
The article mentions the townhouse is a classic colonial style, which, fits right in with that historic neighborhood.
It's like he's saying, I've arrived.
Yes, exactly. But here's what I find intriguing. The article also mentions that he's currently renting out the townhouse for about $3,700 a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty savvy move.
Yeah.
Especially considering, his success after Hillbilly Elegy,
Right.
the book deals, the movie rights.
Right.
It kind of paints a picture of someone who's strategic, thinking ahead,
Right.
building a strong financial foundation.
Exactly. He's not just entering the political arena.
Yeah.
He's doing it from a position of strength.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we have the modest childhood home representing his roots.
Right.
Then the strategic D.C. townhouse marking his entry into the political world.
Yeah.
Now, in 2018, Vance decides to head back to Ohio.
Okay.
You might think he'd go back to Middletown,
Right.
maybe try to recapture some of that Hillbilly Elegy magic, but he doesn't, does he?
No, he doesn't. And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Vance buys a historic home in East Walnut Hills, Cincinnati.
Oh, wow.
We're talking 6,000 square feet.
Mm.
A blend of Gothic revival and Victorian architecture. It's a statement piece.
Yeah.
It is.
Big time.
Yeah.
But he chooses East Walnut Hills, a neighborhood known for being pretty liberal.
Yeah.
What do you make of that choice?
Well, imagine Vance's situation here.
Yeah, okay.
He's built this national platform as a conservative voice.
Right.
He's returning to his home state.
Yeah.
But he's choosing a community that doesn't necessarily align with his political views.
Right.
It definitely raised some eyebrows, didn't it?
No, absolutely. The article talks about how some neighbors were surprised,
Yeah.
even skeptical. They wondered if it was a political move,
Right.
A way to try to bridge the divide, or maybe just a sign that his own views were changing.
It's a choice that really gets you thinking about the relationship between our personal beliefs
Yeah.
and the communities we choose to live in.
Yeah.
Is he trying to make a statement? Or is he simply looking for a certain lifestyle and a sense of community?
Yeah.
even if it means being surrounded by people who might disagree with him politically.
And what about the architecture?
Yeah.
Gothic revival, Victorian, those styles evoke a certain sense of history, tradition,
hmm
even grandeur. What do you think he's trying to convey with that choice?
You know, those architectural styles are often associated with a certain level of ambition and aspiration.
Okay.
They speak to a connection to the past,
Yeah.
to a time of craftsmanship and detail. It's fascinating to think about what drew him to that particular aesthetic.
It makes you wonder if he sees himself as part of that lineage,
Right.
that tradition.
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
And it leads us to his most recent move in 2023,
Okay.
a family home in Delray, Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay.
Right?
Now, this is a community known for being very family-friendly,
Yeah.
but also quite liberal and inclusive, and it seems they have a pretty good sense of humor, too.
Oh, right.
The article mentions this yarn bombing incident shortly after he moved in.
I remember that, yeah.
Apparently, some neighbors put up, knitted flags
Yeah.
and a Respect Our Rights sign near his house.
That's right, yeah. It was a playful way of acknowledging their differing political views while welcoming him to the neighborhood. It speaks volumes about the character of that community, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It
Yeah.
seems like they're saying, we might not agree on everything, but
Right.
we can still be good neighbors and have a little fun with it.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see that kind of approach, especially in today's polarized climate.
Oh, totally.
It makes you wonder how that incident might have played out in a different community.
Yeah.
One that might not be as open to differing viewpoints.
It's definitely something to think about. So we've gone from a modest childhood home in Middletown
Right.
to a strategic townhouse in the heart of D.C., a grand historic home in a liberal Cincinnati neighborhood,
Right.
and now a family home in an inclusive but still politically liberal community in Alexandria. It's been quite a journey, and each house seems to tell a different part of J.D. Vance's story.
And we haven't even gotten to the potential vice president's residence yet.
Oh, that's right. If Vance wins the election with Trump, he might just find himself moving again.
Yeah.
This time to #1 Observatory Circle, the official vice president's residence. Let's talk about a step up in terms of square footage and history.
That potential move would be the culmination of his journey from small-town Ohio to the national stage.
Totally.
It's a 9,000-square-foot home built in 1893, sitting on a massive 72-acre estate. The article describes it as having this understated elegance,
Huh.
which is kind of ironic considering some of the more flamboyant figures who have lived there.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think about that contrast. From a 2,000-square-foot childhood home in Middletown to potentially residing in one of the most prestigious homes in the country.
It is quite a trajectory, and it makes you wonder how all of these different homes have shaped him, how he's navigated the expectations and perceptions of the communities he's chosen to live in.
Yeah, it's like each house is a piece of a puzzle,
Right.
and we're trying to put it all together to get a clearer picture of who J.D. Vance is.
Exactly. And it's not just about J.D. Vance. It's about all of us.
Oh,
How do our homes
yeah.
reflect our own values, our ambitions, our struggles?
Right.
How do they shape our interactions with the world around us?
Those are some really great questions. And
Yeah.
you know what? We're going to take a closer look at some of those questions as we continue our deep dive into J.D. Vance's real estate journey.
Okay, great.
Stay with us.
Yeah, it really does make you think, do we seek out houses and communities that reflect who we are? Or do those spaces end up shaping us
Yeah.
in ways we don't even realize?
It's like that age-old question,
Right.
nature versus nurture, but applied to architecture. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a little bit of both.
I think you're right. It's probably a dynamic interplay
Yeah.
between our personal preferences and the environments we choose to inhabit.
Okay, so let's get back to J.D. Vance and his real estate journey.
Okay.
We've seen how his homes have served as these markers of different stages in his life, his
Yeah.
roots, his ambition, his return to Ohio.
Hmm.
But let's dig a little deeper into the architectural details.
Yeah.
You mentioned his Capitol Hill townhouse had that classic colonial style,
Yeah.
which seems very fitting for that neighborhood.
Yes, and remember, he bought that townhouse in 2014,
Yeah.
right as he was stepping onto the national stage.
Right.
It wasn't just a place to live.
Yeah.
It was a statement about belonging,
Yeah.
about being a part of the political establishment.
It's like he was saying, I'm here and I'm ready to play the game.
Exactly. And then just a few years later, he makes this dramatic shift
Yeah.
with the purchase of that grand historic home in Cincinnati,
Right.
Gothic Revival Victorian architecture.
Right.
Those styles are all about making a statement.
They definitely evoke a sense of history and tradition
Yes.
and permanence.
And those styles were incredibly popular during a period of rapid economic and social change in America.
Oh, okay.
They represented a yearning for stability,
Yeah.
for a connection to the past,
Yeah.
a belief in progress. It's fascinating to think about how those themes might resonate with Vance's own story
Yeah.
and his political views.
Yeah. It's like he's drawing a parallel between his own journey and a particular chapter in American history.
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that architecture isn't just about aesthetics.
Right.
It's a reflection of cultural values,
Yeah.
social aspirations, economic realities.
Okay, so we've got the symbolism of the architectural styles,
Yeah.
but let's talk about the communities themselves. We talked about how his move to East Walnut Hills,
Right.
a predominantly liberal area, raised eyebrows.
And remember that yarn bombing incident in his current neighborhood in Alexandria?
Oh, yeah?
That playful protest spoke volumes about the community's character.
Yeah.
They were willing to engage with his different viewpoint,
Mm.
but they weren't afraid to express their own values either.
It's a great example of how a community can find that balance between
Right.
welcoming newcomers and staying true to its own identity.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder how Vance sees himself fitting into these different communities.
Yeah.
Is he seeking out dialogue and engagement?
Right.
Or is he more comfortable in spaces where his views are already the dominant ones?
Yeah, that's a tough question, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
Right.
But it's a question that applies to all of us, isn't it?
It is.
How do we choose the communities we live in?
Right.
And how do those choices shape our interactions with the world?
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the details of square footage and architectural styles.
Yeah.
But the real story is about how our homes and communities shape our values,
Right.
our relationships, and our perspectives.
Okay, so we've talked about the symbolism of Vance's homes, the architectural details, the communities he's chosen to live in.
Right.
But there's one more piece of this puzzle we haven't explored yet.
Yeah.
That potential move to the vice president's residence.
Right. Number 1 Observatory Circle. A 9,000 square foot mansion built in 1893,
Right.
situated on a sprawling 72-acre estate. It's a far cry from that modest childhood home in Middletown, wouldn't you say?
It's an incredible contrast, and it speaks to the dramatic arc of Vance's journey.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the house itself. What can you tell us about its history and architectural significance?
Well, it's interesting because the house was originally built for the superintendent of the U.S. Naval Observatory,
Huh.
not for the vice president.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't until 1974 that Congress designated it as the official residence for the vice president.
So it has this unexpected history, this blending of scientific observation and political power.
Exactly. And architecturally, it's a blend of styles
Okay.
reflecting the different eras in which it was built and renovated.
Okay.
It has elements of Queen Anne and colonial revival architecture with a focus on functionality and understated elegance.
It's interesting that you mentioned understated elegance.
Yeah.
It seems like a bit of a contradiction considering the grandeur of the place.
It is, and that's what makes it so
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a house that's meant to project a sense of power and authority, but it's also designed to be welcoming and approachable.
It's almost like it's trying to strike a balance between formality and accessibility,
Yes.
which seems fitting for the role of the vice president.
Yes. And it makes you wonder how J.D. Vance, with his background and his political views, would navigate that balance if he were to live there.
Right.
Would he embrace the formality and tradition of the house?
Yeah.
Or would he try to make it more reflective of his own personal style and values?
Those are great questions. And you know what? I think those questions get to the heart of what we've been exploring in this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not just about the physical spaces themselves. It's
Yeah.
about how we inhabit those spaces, how
Yeah.
we shape them, and how they in turn shape us.
And it's about how our choices, even something as seemingly personal as where we choose to live, can reflect our values,
Yeah.
our aspirations, and our relationship with the world around us.
It's been a fascinating journey through J.D. Vance's real estate history.
It has.
And I think we've uncovered some pretty interesting insights along the way.
We certainly have. And, I think we have just enough time to wrap up this deep dive
Okay.
and maybe leave our listener with some final thoughts to ponder.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it. Okay, so, we've traced J.D. Vance's path from that modest house in Middletown all the way to the doorstep of the vice president's residence.
Right.
It's been quite a ride.
It really has. And along the way, we've seen how his homes have reflected not just his personal journey, but also
Yeah.
some of the broader tensions and trends in American
No,
society.
that's a great point. When you think about it, our homes are often microcosms of the larger world.
Hmm.
They reflect our values, our aspirations, and even our anxieties.
Absolutely. And in Vance's case, we see this tension
Yeah.
between his roots in rural America and his ambition to succeed in the world of national politics. His choice of homes, the architectural styles, the communities he's lived in, they all speak to this ongoing negotiation between his past and his present.
And that potential move to the vice president's residence adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
It would be the ultimate symbol of his arrival on the national stage, but it would also place him in a setting that's steeped in tradition and formality.
It's fascinating to imagine how he would navigate that environment.
Yeah.
Would he embrace the traditional role of the vice president and the expectations that come with it? Or would he try to redefine the role in a way that reflects his own unique background and perspective?
One thing that's really struck me throughout this whole deep dive
Yeah.
is the power of community.
Yeah.
We saw it in the reactions to his move to East Walnut Hills,
Right.
and we saw it again in that yarn bombing incident in Alexandria. It seems like no matter where he goes, Vance elicits strong reactions from the people around him.
That's true. And it speaks to the fact that our homes aren't just private spaces.
Hmm.
They're also part of a larger social fabric. We're constantly interacting with our neighbors, our communities, and the built environment around us.
And those interactions can shape our views, our experiences,
Yeah.
and even our sense of who we are.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into J.D. Vance's real estate journey,
Yeah.
I think it's worth asking ourselves a few questions. How do our own homes reflect our values and aspirations? What kind of communities do we choose to live in, and how do those choices shape our lives? And perhaps most importantly, how can we create spaces that foster connection, understanding, and a sense of belonging?
Those are great questions and really gets you thinking. It's been a fascinating exploration of how homes can be so much more than just bricks and mortar. They can be windows into our past, reflections of our present, and even glimpses of our future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.